Okay, so it is 7 o'clock, and being 7 o'clock, we'll go ahead and begin. Of course, we'll say the Our Father to begin in prayer, and then I'll give an introduction to what we're talking about tonight. I'm excited to talk about this topic. This is certainly a hot topic. It could be maybe a little too late to really cover it since we have the elections next week. But nonetheless, better late than never. We've had a lot going on these last couple weeks, and so certainly needed to talk about it with Father Clark and make sure we just have all of our T's crossed and I's dotted before we go forward into a topic as serious as voting and participating in public life as a Catholic. So I think that there's a lot that we can discuss here. I welcome your questions in the chat. Keep in mind that I represent St. Thomas More and as an extension of the diocese itself. So I'm not going to provide a specific answer who you should vote for. So don't ask that question. I won't answer it. But I think it should be pretty clear by the end of the night. You should be able to form your conscience when we talk about certain topics, what the bishops are really asking us to focus on, which candidate should really get your vote at the end of the day. But more than just voting, we really need to consider looking into our hearts and souls about how do we participate greater in serving the Lord, building his kingdom, and working towards the common good. So with that being said, let's start with prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay. Hi, Margaret. Glad to see you here. This will be exciting. And I'm kind of at peace right now, but I'm also a little nervous because at the same time, because I've never really dealt with this topic publicly. Obviously, anything you say on YouTube that's for the public is beyond just, St. Thomas More. And so know that this is a video. This is a live stream specifically about voting and forming your conscience, of course, coming from a Catholic perspective. Now, other denominations will have their perspectives on what issues are more important, but I'm going to give you the Catholic perspective. Okay, so I also happen to think it's the correct perspective. So I think we're going to have a good time here. And again, please ask your questions as they come up in the chat. So the way this is going to work is I'm actually going to quote a lot. So I hope it doesn't feel too much like I'm reading a lot. I apologize in advance if it does. There's a lot of great quotes in this document that I'm going to present to you tonight. The document is called Forming Consciousness for Faithful Citizenship, not forming consciousness for voting. Okay, so for faithful citizenship, because really your citizenship, voting is just is a part of it, right? There's so much more about to being a citizen than just simply voting, and we really can't justify our participation in public life and say it's a good thing if all we do is vote, right? There's got to be something else there. So I'll talk about that in a second, but getting back to the structure of things tonight, what we'll talk about is this document, and this document is broken up into 3 parts. We're only really going to talk about part 1 because in doing so, we'll cover some of the topics in part 2, and then part 3 is really just kind of a closing remarks about the beginning. So thanks, Lauren. Appreciate that. So again, part 1 is the biggest part of the whole document. It's roughly 20 pages. Part 2, again, it just talks about certain issues, which that could be fun to talk about. So those issues being, of course, human life, promoting peace, marriage, family life, religious freedom, preferential options for the poor, economic justice, healthcare, migration or immigration, Catholic education. All right, these are just a list of, that's about half the list, actually. That it just deals more specifically with those issues in part 2. I don't feel like I need to get into those too deeply tonight. I think that as far as the live stream viewers are concerned, I think we're all probably on the same page, but I will cover them as I cover the 4 questions and 4 main principles that should really guide our our conscience in voting, right? So what does this document really say? Okay, so when we read this document, forming our consciences for faithful citizenship, they reflect on Catholic teaching and political life, right? And so really when we think about what it means to be a citizen, right, we realize that as a Catholic, right, I'm not just, my religion isn't just here, and then my life is here, my work is here. You know, my religion is what I do on Sunday, and my life is what I do every other hour of the day, including Sunday, right, day of the week, right? You are Catholic no matter what. You're Catholic wherever you go, right? And so that introduces itself into the political sphere, right? So if you're a politician who happens to be Catholic, then your faith should be guiding your principles of political opinion, right? And that's really, really important. So, you know, if you're, you know, for example, I think you can make the case that Amy Coney Barrett, right, the recent Supreme Court judge, who was just nominated to that position, or not nominated, but actually confirmed to that position, is extremely, you know, she's a very Catholic politician, right? She, you know, is pretty clear in the way that she lives her faith, not just simply by saying, well, I believe this, I believe that, but she's very obviously pro-life, right? She has, I believe, 7 kids. 2 of them are adopted. So she lives her faith, and you can see that. And so we're very happy for her to receive that confirmation and to live her Catholic faith. I'm not going to dog the politicians that are Catholic by name only. You already know who they are. So I want to let's keep things light and affirmative, okay, and talk about these people we really like, okay. So Amy's great. So anyways, what we want to do is we want to draw from faith and reason all in all ways to affirm the dignity of the human person and the common good for all, right? These are our 2 major principles, and through that we're going to have the way that we're going to have some specific principles to talk about with those. So basically, how do we affirm the human person, and then how do we treat everyone else with dignity and operate in a society with other people? Okay, and for my introverts out there, yes, you have to operate in society with other people. Okay, so for the rest of us that are extroverted, right, this is something that we really love. But again, you guys, we're all building God's kingdom one way or another. Okay. So here is a good quote right from the beginning of the introductory letter to the rest of this document, which honestly, the letter kind of stands on its own as a very good document to read. It says this: for all Catholics, including those seeking public office, our participation in political parties, or other groups to which we may belong should be influenced by our faith, not the other way around, right? Again, our faith is first, our relationship with God is first and foremost, and then we should bring that into our political parties, bring that into our groups, affiliations that we're part of. You know, and now there's a lot of nuance here. Well, what if I want to be a part of something that isn't specifically Catholic, and, you know, they don't practice Catholic teachings? Well, okay, we have to ask ourselves, what are those things that they practice? Are they compatible with, in some degree, with our faith, in the sense that I can live alongside with you, or are they completely incompatible that I actually need to remove myself from that group and affiliation so that I don't create scandal, all right, for myself or for this other group? Had a good experience with this in the past. Again, I don't want to get into details because of the tension that could come out of it, but basically a gentleman I knew a long time ago was part of a group that was promoting views about marriage that were not in line with the Catholic Church. But this was a young man that was Catholic and very passionate about his faith, and I questioned him on it, basically saying, well, if you're promoting this particular group, this group doesn't promote our views, so are you promoting their views? And he said, no, I'm not promoting their views, but I want to help people in this group understand the Catholic Church. And I said, well, okay, you're walking a really delicate line here, because a lot of people that you don't know real are watching you join this group, and therefore um, perhaps they're thinking you believe what they believe and espouse what they espouse, and that it's okay as a Catholic to believe that. I think you have to be careful, right? If you're going to be a part of a group where there are beliefs that aren't really congruous with Catholic faith, I think you need to discern that. What level of scandal could I be bringing to the church and to myself, or by trying to affiliate with these types of groups? Okay, so again, same thing with your political party. So if you're part of a political party that is pro-choice, for example, this would be the Democrat platform, you have to be able to give a very good reason as to why you believe that it's still okay to be a part of this party affiliation. Again, we're going to talk a lot about abortion and pro-life issues in this particular voting segment because that's a big part of this document. So we'll get to that in a second. So as we go on, just know that, right? Like, we don't become a part of a member of a party and then try to bring, ourselves to an understanding of faith and morals because we're part of this group. No, we have our faith and morals as we have come to understand them, revealed by God, handed down by the church, and then of course given to us through the teachings of our pastors, of our parents, right, forming our consciousness, right, so that we can go into the world and help develop and bring the light of Christ to that world, right? And so, anyways, you have to very, very well, you got to know where are you. Anyways, I can go on and on about that, but we have so much more of this document to cover, right? This is the first page. So I will talk about a very important point that is in the introduction here, and that is that the bishops make a very strong emphasis on this, and this cannot be overlooked. Okay, and I'm going to make 2 points here, and just to make sure I make the second point, I'm going to write it down. Seamless. If you know what I whispered, put it in the chat. No. Okay. So first off, the bishops say this, that the threat of abortion, okay, remains our preeminent priority because it directly attacks life itself. So first off, there are 2 principles that, okay, we use to guide our social interaction, our thinking, our voting, and that's the dignity of the human person and the common good, right? Okay, so abortion, I just want to say this first and foremost. If this is something that you have experienced yourself, that you've gone through with one, I want you to know that you are loved by us, okay? That you are a child of God, and we do not condemn you for making this decision, okay? We want you to know that we still have nothing but respect for you. We have nothing but love in our hearts for you. And we want you to hopefully come to the church for whatever healing that you might feel you need in your heart. Or if you feel like you don't need that healing, then know that, like, we can still have a conversation about it. We can still talk about it and be civil and understand where we're coming from, right? So I'm gonna speak pretty heavily into abortion, but I don't want you to think that if you've had one that you've completely lost your ability to have a relationship with God or the church, right? That is certainly not the case. We want to have a relationship with you. We want you to know that you are loved not just by God but by us as well. And so, again, getting back to the point, is that the church really truly believes that abortion is a problem. Okay, so we define this as a termination of human life inside the womb. Outside the womb would be considered infanticide, right? When a child who is supposed to be aborted somehow survives. There are legislators, and it actually makes a point to say this in the document, that are opening the door to infanticide. All right, this is already happening, where born children are being left to die. okay, if they were slated to be aborted. This is, again, an egregious moral evil. It's something that, from an objective standpoint, we say this is very evil. Now, again, if you have gone through with an abortion, we understand that there's a subjective side to moral acts, and we cherish you as a person. Okay, we don't want you to feel bad. And so, with that being said, look, this is a preeminent issue. This isn't just one among many. So my second point is what's called the seamless garment. It's a bad argument. It's one that a lot of people will use to say, well, you can't just be a single issue voter. The bishops actually say, don't be a single issue voter. Abortion is one issue. But the seamless garment argument is that all of these political positions are equal and have a moral equivalency. Okay, so they're equal in their morality. And that's not true. Okay, so some issues are going to be worse than others, and we see this one as the worst. And so I think it's pretty clear from this document that we need to vote, form our conscience to understand abortion first and foremost. And if we don't, then we need to go forward and ask, what is it? When does life really begin? In the Catholic Church, it begins with conception. For all of the scientific consensus up until the 1960s, that was the case, conception. Things started changing in the 60s when they started saying, well, maybe it's implantation, where the egg actually implants itself. The fertilized egg implants itself into the wall, uterine wall. Okay, and that's not the case, right? That was to get the pill out, right? And there's a lot of changing of definitions of terms to get us to where we are today. And that leads us to a point I'll probably make in a few moments about structures of sin. John Paul II kind of coined this term, that there are structures in our society, laws that have been made that, we can't just get rid of. We're not going to get rid of abortion in America overnight. It's going to take time. And so John Paul II says in structures of sin, right, like, if our life as Catholics, right, is our whole life, and the way we introduce ourselves into politics, right, laws are essentially moral in nature. I mean, there's a lot of laws that you could say are pretty arbitrary or ridiculous even, or unnecessary, but they all kind of stand for some type of morality. Even the speed limit, right? It's a law that talks about the safety, the human dignity of the driver next to you, right? I mean, that you can get into it that deeply. But when it comes to voting in, politicians, we're hoping that these politicians vote with their conscience and create laws to protect human life. And so there's also a principle called gradualism, and it's not one of the principles I'm going to discuss today. But in gradualism, sometimes we have to take steps towards our ultimate goal. And so in Texas, we have a lot of tension here because we have groups, and I'll just brush over this really quickly, but groups with really good missions. Okay, the Texas Right for Life group has a good mission, but then there are other pro-life groups out there that are good as well. And so there's a lot of tension, though, between them, because people will argue that the Texas Right for Life doesn't allow for the principle of gradualism in legislature. And I think that we're all familiar with this when we see how slowly over time America has gone from where it was, without kind of social type of programs to, create so-called safety nets for people like Social Security, to the point where now we have all types of programs that are giving tax credits to people for reasons that may not be helpful in the end. And again, this should all go into your conscience when you're voting. So, for example, I was reading about the war on poverty in 1967, how poverty really has skyrocketed, in particular, single motherhood, because a lot of programs came out as a result of that to give tax credits to women, or I guess fathers too, with children, And but as soon as they, married, even if they were poor, they would enter into a new tax bracket, lose those tax credits, right, and then be worse off and less incentivized to stay single, or more incentivized to stay single. These are real problems, right? These are problems that we've created with our legislation, right? We don't really want that, to perpetuate those types of welfare programs, but actually have lawmakers create programs that help poor families out of poverty instead of penalizing them for getting married. So anyways, I'm getting way off topic, but the preeminent issue, of course, is that of abortion because it threats human life itself. Now, that's a single issue, but when you say, well, I'm pro-life, well, pro-life means I have a lot of issues under this pro-life umbrella. Abortion is only one of them, okay? So euthanasia is another one, the termination of life of those who we deem unfit for living, which, again, I don't want to be on the list of that. There are cases even now where the Texas Medical Board has basically said, no, that person should not receive treatment. And I remember reading a case during the beginning of COVID where a quadriplegic man was denied treatment for COVID because he caught COVID, and he starved to death because he needed other treatments for his other ailments. And again, it was an article I read months ago. I'm not going to put it in the chat or anything. It's a really horrific story. But basically, he was deemed not worthy of life, and he had a wife and kids, and he's gone now, right? Someone decided for him to die. That's effectively euthanasia, right? So anyways, so these issues that surround pro-life mentality, right, is the dignity of human life. We want to make sure everyone can live, everyone can have a happy life. And now with that, one of the other big issues that comes with the pro-life movement is a conversation about the death penalty. So let me talk about that very, very briefly. So with the death penalty, the Catholic Church has traditionally actually always been somewhat supportive of it. You can read this in the Catechism that under special circumstances, and it actually is outlined later in this as under the issues section in part 2 about the death penalty. But realistically, the death penalty can't be applied in the United States because we have the infrastructure in our country to incarcerate somebody that would be deemed worthy, I guess, if you will, of the death penalty. All right. So I think it's really important that we understand that, right? That the teaching originally was that for the sake of the common good, if somebody was willing, could not be contained, could not be incarcerated, and is going to hurt and damage others, right, to kill others, committed to killing others, then you would apply to them the death penalty. But when we can incarcerate them for life, then obviously we would not. And of course, I think there's a lot of argument that we need reform on the death penalty, and we need to figure out how this is going to work. Now, with that being said, all of these life issues are very important, and so we have to align ourselves really with a party that's going to cover them the best, right? And so abortion is more important, higher on that kind of moral scale than the death penalty, okay? Because abortion is the taking of an innocent human life. The death penalty is applied to somebody who has done egregiously evil acts and is committed to continuing to commit those acts, right? And this same theory leads into what we call just war theory. It is okay to defend yourself, even if it means that somebody, an aggressor, would die, right? And so, with that being said, okay, these are really complicated issues, and they should not be taken lightly. But we don't want to draw moral equivalence and say, oh, well, all pro-life issues are under the banner of pro-life, therefore they're the same. No, they're not. Okay, they're not the same. They're not morally equal. And so if you're going to be a one-issue voter when it comes to abortion, I think you clearly already know who you're voting for. But if you're going to take on the whole pro-life um, idea, I think, again, you probably already know where that goes. But know that neither party actually is going to satisfy you, okay, as truly pro-life. One more than the other, but neither perfectly. So that's something that's really important to remember, okay? There are issues that are beyond just abortion that are important. And also be pro-life about your own life, okay? So um, I read a quote. One of the kids. Oh, you know what? I took a picture of it. One of our teens wrote this quote down from Saint Augustine, and I really, really hope I did not delete it. And I did because I'm terrible at keeping photos. Um, but to paraphrase the quote, basically, he said, treat your body as if it's going to live forever, and treat your soul as if you could lose it tomorrow, right? So treat your body, right? If you're pro-life, take care of your body. Okay, so, but what are some other issues that the Catholic bishops want us to really be focused on? Obviously, immigration issues at the border. We really need to figure out some kind of middle ground between letting people in and keeping people out, right? That's no one's going to question that, I think. And also, we all have the responsibility of being informed, all right? So, if you're hearing on the one hand, hey, so-and-so does this, well, but maybe so-and-so also did that, right? I mean, so we need to really know what happened, where these things come from, inform ourselves on the decisions that got us to where we're at. No one president is the entire, decision-making process for how we got into this immigration problem, right? I mean, this has been decades in the making, right? So we need to really consider that when voting, okay? Obviously, we have wounds from racism, okay? This is not hard to see, okay? I think there's different opinions we can have. How bad are those wounds? Were those wounds healing? I think these are all great conversations we could have. Obviously, we don't have time tonight to get into all of that. And finally, they also mention that it's essential to affirm the nature of the human person as male and female. Okay, there's definitely a lot of recent talk about the issue of transgenderism. This is not something the Catholic Church is going to hold. Men are men, XY chromosomes. You're a man. Your biology speaks to the reality of who you are. Same thing with women, two X chromosomes, right? And of course, climate change is important to discuss and to be informed about. Okay, now I'm not taking a position on climate change. Of course, again, I'm representing the church today. I have my personal opinions, and with that, basically, it's really important, again, that we look at all these issues to figure out how we're going to vote. So with that being said, I'm going to talk about the 4 principles, okay, to voting. And those principles are, so I'm going to list them really quick. The dignity of the human person, subsidiarity, the common good, and solidarity. Now, I think we talked a lot about the dignity of the human person, so what I'm going to do is actually talk about that really briefly. But as Catholics, right, we are all called to vote. We're all called to participate in the life of the public square, because in doing so, we promote a morality, right, at the end of the day, of what is good and what is wrong. And our laws reflect that morality. So first off, we have the dignity of the human person. All right, that is that human life is sacred, right? If you believe that human life is sacred when it starts in the womb, you're going to believe it through and through, right? And so this is why, again, we are very serious about the issue of abortion, because we do believe that, right, this is an innocent person that's in the womb, right? This is a person that has their own rights. This person has their own, it's made in God's image and likeness, no matter how that person's conceived, right? And so this is where, some people might argue, well, what if somebody was, conceived without their will, right? Their will was not involved, right? You know what this means. Well, obviously, a tragedy has occurred. A great act of violence has occurred. And my heart goes out and my heart breaks for somebody who's experienced that. And so my recommendation is, right, your best option is go find healing, right? Go find some kind of healing, both physical and spiritual, right? And in that process, okay, realize that what is within you is a great gift from God, right? It's part of who you are, right? And it's a great gift from God, and that child will bring joy to your life. We don't want to commit a secondary act of violence, right? Or a second act of violence, I should call it that. Abortion really is a violent act, right? It's very, very rough. And so anyways, no matter what, right? That's a human life. It's innocent, right? We can't take innocent human life. It's not our call, right? And so it's a serious issue. We really must take it seriously. So, okay, we must be opposed to torture, unjust war, right? I talked about just war. So just war is something we can do. We can go to war, okay? But unjust war, right? If we were just going to go to war over a country because of maybe they have a commodity that we really want, that's probably not going to be considered just. But if there's a war that's actually trying to kill us, right, trying to attack us, take our land, we have a right to defend ourselves. That would be just. Okay. Subsidiarity. Okay. I really like this one. So subsidiarity is a principle I talk about. I actually talked about it when I taught on conflict management, because you'll see this principle lived out in so many ways on a micro level or on a macro level. Okay, so in your own life, so okay, subsidiarity is this principle to promote the dignity of the person without showing concern. Okay, it is impossible to promote the dignity of the person without showing concern for the family, group, or associations that you're in. Okay, local territories, So in short, for that aggregate of economy, social, cultural, sport-oriented, recreational, professional, and political expressions to which people spontaneously give life and which make it possible for them to achieve social growth. Okay, so the principle of subsidiarity is basically that to promote the dignity of human persons, we need to be a part of a society, right, and part of these groups. But namely, that this reminds us that larger institutions, okay, so like the federal government, for example, in society should not overwhelm and interfere with smaller or local institutions. Yet larger institutions have essential responsibilities when the more local institutions cannot adequately protect human dignity, meet human needs, and advance the common good. So I'll give you a great example of just in our country how this kind of works out. For example, the federal government, you could argue, right, needs to have a military and a military budget, because only the federal government and its military can protect me from outside threats, right, as far as the outside threats of other countries. Now, I don't need the Army to protect me from a threat of violence in Houston. That's what we have the police for, right? But I don't need the federal government perhaps to mandate whether or not, and this is just my opinion, but whether or not we should all wear face masks, right, to deal with the coronavirus. Now, I wear a face mask. I've got a whole bunch of them over here, okay? I am very responsible with how I do it. I think that we need to let our city deal with that, or our county deal with it, and let the county tell me and advise me as to how I should go about wearing the face mask to deal with the coronavirus, right? Why is this? Because, well, the coronavirus is an issue that's dealt with unique in every territory that it's in, right? Some states need to be harder on it than others. Some counties need to be harder on it than others. We should not allow certain states where this is a real problem affect certain other states where this is not, right? So again, the principle of subsidiarity says, look, deal with things on your level, deal with things in your issue, right? When I lived in the smaller town, Alvin, during the outbreak of coronavirus, not a lot of people took it seriously. I would say, I mean, a lot of people did, don't get me wrong. But, you know, pretty much you could walk around and never encounter someone, right? So it wasn't a big deal. It's a small town. But in Houston, yeah, I mean, I'm going to wear it everywhere I go. And I should have the freedom to choose that, right? I shouldn't have to have a federal government step in and do that. So if someone's campaigning on the idea of infringing on that type of personal liberty that your local government should really be in charge of, I would be worried about that, because the principle of subsidiarity says, hey, look, higher order, don't get involved down here, right? Don't do that. Like, likewise, education really should be done on a lower order. The city of Houston, HISD, should determine for itself, right, what these kids need to learn, how they need to learn. I don't know per se, again, if the federal government needs to have a huge say in education across the states. But maybe there are some things it should say. Again, I'm not taking strict positions. I'm just saying the principle of subsidiarity states that the local governance really should take precedent over the higher in dealing with those areas that it can. And when dealing with areas that it can't, like military protection from other countries, then yes, it should come in. Or, for example, when we have natural hurricanes, disasters like that, we need the federal government often to come in, FEMA and those types of organizations. So we really, we vote for candidates that keep that in line, right? Okay, that they're going to keep their powers, and our powers, and go, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to hammer that point any harder. I think that one's really a unique point to hit. I think it's one that people tend to forget. And I think that in recent days, perhaps, maybe I'm too young to know, but I think that we've really made gods out of our presidents and out of the federal government, and we look to them to solve our problems in Houston. Well, we really shouldn't, right? I shouldn't be looking to any president to solve a situation that Houston needs to solve, right? That's why you vote in Houston. That's why you vote in Harris County, right? Which I was not able to do because apparently I'm registered in Brazoria County and I forgot. So I did vote though. So with that being said, the next principle is the common good. So we have dignity of the human person, subsidiarity. Now we're talking about the common good. What is the common good? The common good indicates the sum total of social conditions which allow people, either as a group or as individuals, to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. This is from Gaudium et Spes, a Vatican II document. Okay. Another way of saying this is that the common good, in fact, can be understood as as the social and community dimension of the moral good. Okay, so what is the common good? Well, it's basically kind of the morality of all of us, right? It's not so much this group think at all. No, it's just what are those conditions in which all of us as a community can grow and reach human fulfillment. I often compare this to what we call just the good, right? What is the good? Well, God is true, good, and beautiful, right? God is our ultimate fulfillment. He's our ultimate end. And so what is the common good, right? It's those things that help us as a society reach fulfillment. Well, what is good for you? What is good for you to reach human fulfillment? When we talk about love, love is willing the good of the other, right? Love is willing the good of the beloved, right? And so love is what is good for you. I want what's good for you. Well, good is that you reach human fulfillment, right? So, for example, right, if there's somebody that, like your child, right? You love them, right? And you want what's good for them. You want them to grow up to be a mature, disciplined, smart, human being, right? A religious being, right? And so you're going to try to grow them a certain way, right? And so you're going to have rules, the rules of your house. That's what the word economy means, right? The economy of your home is going to be structured in such a way to allow the life of a child to grow up to be totally fulfilled, right? And if it's a man or woman, right, they're fulfilled in either fatherhood or motherhood, however that takes place. So that's the common good. So those are the social conditions you have in your house to grow your children. Well, as a society, what are common goods, right? Or what is the common good for us as a society? Is a multiplicity of families, right? Because families are the unit of society, the first unit of society. Okay, so it is good that we have, right, um, housing, public utilities, right? Some people would argue not water, internet now is a common good that people should have, that people have a right to have. Um, work, work itself, and having favorable working conditions, right? Laws that protect workers is part of that common good. Okay, so again, what are these things that we can promote to help build the society up? This is what we should be voting for. Um, so when I talked about earlier the war on poverty, right? Okay, it may have had a good intention, but it's had an effect that people would argue has not raised society up, but actually brought society down. Again, it's a nuanced argument, nuanced conversation, one we can't get into tonight. And then finally, solidarity. Okay, so what is solidarity? It highlights in a particular way the intrinsic social nature of the human person, the equality of all in dignity and rights, and the common path of individuals and peoples towards an ever more committed unity. Okay, solidarity must be above all in its values and moral virtue that determines the order of institutions. On the basis of the principle of structures of sin, we talked about that, John Paul II was mentioning it, that dominate relationships between individuals and peoples must be overcome. So, what am I saying here? What does this mean? Is that solidarity, right, is that admission, okay, as a human person, I'm not just an individual person walking in this world alone. No, by my very nature of being human, I live in society. I live in a social construct, and I naturally want to be in one. No matter how introverted you might be, you still function in a society. So having some kind of solidarity, this unity with your brothers and sisters around you is really important. Now, what does this do for you, right? Besides promoting the common good, um, this is going to help unify us so that uh, we can get over these structures of sin. So when I was talking about abortion and how it's so ingrained in our society, um, right? Well, in solidarity with our brothers and sisters, we should really seek to overcome it, right? So some people would argue, well, don't worry about voting for abortion. Don't let that be the issue you vote over because it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Well, actually, I believe that in solidarity with all Christians in this country, right, we can over time at least work our way back to something manageable. Work our way back to a principle that is manageable. Where, yeah, we may never get rid of abortion, but at least we won't have infanticide. At least we won't have late-term abortion, for sure, right? At least we won't have taxpayer-funded abortion, right? I think that's really important, and we know that that one candidate's for that, one candidate's not, right? So I don't have to get into that too much. Okay, so that's public, right? The Hyde Amendment. Okay, so there's all kinds of ways we can shape the conversation about solidarity, but really we need to find in our hearts, like, look, I'm not voting as just one person alone. Like, I'm voting with a lot of other people to get a particular mission done, right? And that can be a lot of various things, right? So, voting for a particular president, I get this argument. I've had this argument before. Someone says to me, well, I just can't vote for Trump because I don't like his personality. I'll say, well, listen, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but that cannot be a reason for not voting for one person or the other. You have to vote for policies, right? And then also vote for the people that will be around him. And then vote for, right, the possibility that, okay, well, we could end up with more openings on the Supreme Court, and there's a record of moderate people that have been nominated, and the last one being Amy Coney Barrett, who is super Catholic, right? So these are the effects of voting. That's really important, and something to be taken into consideration. So if so again, you may not like a particular one person, but remember this affects more than just one person, right? This affects a whole group of people and the way they move. So some people might argue again, look, they say, look, Biden's Catholic. Okay, well, first off, I question how Catholic, but it's not just about him, right? It's about his running mate, and it's about his future cabinet and future SCOTUS picks and future, right? So you have to see it in that way, and it's not just he's not going to dictate everything for all of it, right? So, so again, same thing with Trump, right? He's not going to dictate every single piece of legislation to go forward, and which is a good thing, right, on both ends. So just know that there's a whole world around these gentlemen that will be brought up, and does this world promote the Catholic views of public policy, right, and how we should be a part of it? And I think the answer to that is actually very clear. Again, I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm not telling you what you should do, but I think at the end of the day, you can, in good conscience, make your vote happen. Okay, so I voted, and I think that if you're really, really just completely tore up inside and you don't know what to do, you have one third option, but it's an extreme option, and that's not to vote, right? Because or not voting for the president, right? You can vote for everybody else. This was now I'll tell you, this is what I did back in 2016, because I did not believe either candidate promoted Catholic values that I believe that they promoted. Okay, so I had a real problem with that. I'm not afraid to say that. There was no public record for President Donald Trump for me to be convinced that his previous history of being Democrat would be any different, of him moving forward, especially not supporting a party. And then, of course, I didn't feel like I could, in good conscience, support Hillary Clinton. So that's all I'm going to say on that. So I just voted the rest of the ticket and then went on. So anyways, I hope that helps a lot. And this year, of course, was different. I think the stakes are a lot higher. I think things are certainly, we have a track record. We have history that we can really vote on. And you need to vote your conscience. I don't want to stop you from voting your conscience. That's not my job. My job is just to help you inform it. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that we can have a fruitful conversation. And anywho, if you haven't read Forming Consciousness for Faithful Citizenship yet, I highly recommend it. It's a good read. It's short too. It's only about 20, well, it's 50 pages, but it's a book that's like this big. So anyways, there are certainly things we can talk about, right? So I think if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, but this will mark the end of the conversation I'm willing to cover. So God bless. All right. Hey. What is the seamless garment piece again? Okay. Against piece. Okay. Okay. If I understand your question correctly, the seamless garment argument is that all of these issues are morally equivalent, right? That there's this kind of seamless, like, well, the way I understand the argument is that all of these moral issues are equal, and so it doesn't really matter, right? They'll say, well, racism is just as bad as abortion, is just as bad as problems with immigration, just as bad as this or that, right? But that's not true. Okay, so every moral decision that we make as persons, um, every moral decision that we make as persons, right, has a weight to it, a gravity to it, and some are worse than others. And so that means that there are in our way of thinking, right, about politics. Okay, there's going to be some laws that are more important to promote, some that are more important that we need to get off the books, some that are more important to uphold, right? Um, so yeah, again, we don't hold to the seamless garment argument. Okay, what we hold is that there are degrees in of importance to these things. As a matter of fact, I want to show y'all something real quick. Here, um, you can actually. Well, I don't want you to pause it because I'm talking, but you can read here that Cardinal DiNardo and the Catholic Herald actually put out a letter recently making a point to emphasize why they use the word preeminent when talking about the issue of abortion. And I don't think he mentions the seamless garment in here, um, but he does talk about how there was some conversation among bishops of whether or not to put it in the same basket with a lot of the other issues or put it above. And so they voted and they won out. The bishops won out. They look, it's above all else. This is a preeminent issue. It's very important. So again, kind of being in obedience to our bishops. I mean, we really got to look at that issue first. We might have some serious issues on both sides with the way we treat immigration, and rightly so. But that is not the biggest issue, and I'm not saying it's not big. I'm just saying it's not the biggest issue, right? Abortion obviously is. Um, so what else? So that was that. That was kind of important. So I hope you're able to read that. You can always track back and pause and read it. Okay, let me see. Immigration problem with past president. I came into the chat late. Yeah, Guadalupe, I'm not exactly sure what your question's asking. And again, I'm not going to get into the specifics of immigration and the issues. I think they're actually a lot more complex than we understand. But and again, representing the church, I don't want to get too defamatory towards one or the other party in this process. Okay, so of course, you can always email me about that. But immigration is a problem, and it's been a problem for a long time. Actually, immigration reform, and basically what's happened over the course of decades is we've kind of kicked the can down the road. As a matter of fact, DACA literally, stands for deferred action, right? Kicking the can down, right? Either way, okay, so sorry, Margaret, the other day on the internet, I heard a priest say that is a mortal sin. Okay, so to respond to your comment, Margaret, is that you have to form your conscience, right? So what is required for a mortal sin? Okay, a mortal sin requires full intent, full intent, full knowledge, and actually carrying it out, right? And so the issue here would be full knowledge, okay? So obviously they intend to do it and they do it, but full knowledge, and the question of knowledge comes to the information that your conscience has, what you formed your conscience to think and to do. It's possible for your conscience to be erroneous. Okay, so if somebody is to say voting for Biden is a mortal sin, they need to obviously provide the reason, but it's not anyone's place to say any action is a mortal sin for somebody else, right? So going back to the issue of abortion, if someone's had an abortion, right, there could be a litany of reasons why. And it's for those reasons that, for many of those reasons, your heart should break, right? And these women are in terrible situations sometimes and extremely under duress. So when you're under duress, right, you're not the full consent of your will may not be present there. So I'm not going to sit there and say if you get an abortion, you've committed a mortal sin, because I really do believe, like many of them, are in a bad place and they need help. In our life as Catholics, we need to be helping them, right? We need to find a way to help women no matter what, right? Get the help that they need, right? And there are organizations, there are plenty, Project Rachel's out there, right? There's plenty of other things. The Gabriel Project for, I think, for women that actually have children, right? So it's nobody's business, I really think, to say that if you do X, that you've committed a mortal sin. But it is our business to say that such and such is a mortal sin, and this is why. And so I think that's an important distinction to make. And it's hard because, again, when we have these conversations without providing first, I think, the reason of why and how we should vote, that people can come to that conclusion on their own, right? I don't need to say that. I think it's important that we vote our conscience, of course, but that we inform it and that why we vote the way we vote. And if at the end of the day you say, okay, well, it's only possible to vote Republican because they hold these views, then that's where you end. That's where it is, right? If you say, well, the Republican Party doesn't do this, for example, the death penalties were kind of notorious, right? For I just outed myself. All right, we're notorious for did it again. Not being in line with the Catholic Church on the death penalty, right? Or being as serious as we should be, but the Democrat Party is, right? And so that's a serious issue. We need to take that very, very much into consideration when going to the voting booth. But remember, what's the preeminent issue? It's abortion, right? Okay, so that's very, very important. What else? So I'm sure many priests have different opinions. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for every one person, there's another opinion, right? And I think that by reading the consensus from the bishops, what they're trying to do as the church is to guide you and lead you into making a decision for yourself, because really there are only two choices, okay? I also this is my personal thing, I don't vote third party because I don't want to split a vote, okay? So I think it's bad. I think it's not helpful for the people that argue for voting for third party are saying, well, we need to keep encouraging people to do this because one day there'll be a major party. Like, no, I don't think so. I don't want to destroy my country for the next 30 years in the process of getting libertarians a majority vote. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. That's my personal opinion. So I think just vote mainstream, but realize if you're voting for a candidate on either side, you're not agreeing to every single principle of theirs, right? You're not agreeing to everything they're saying. You're just voting, in a sense, in a majority of what they're saying. You're voting towards a direction of where you're moving the country. Are we going to go in this direction or really this direction, right? And so it's okay to disagree with your candidate on some things, as I do, okay? So Father Clark had a homily about 2 weekends ago. I think it was spot on. He said, look, there's problems in both parties. You have to form your conscience and realize that one way or another, you have to vote, but and you should vote. I really think you have to, but you don't need to take on every single issue as if it's your own, and then try to find a way for it to conform to Catholic faith. No, I think that your Catholic faith needs to come into the picture. We live in this country. We are citizens first of the kingdom of God, right? And we need to uphold that and serve human beings no matter where they come from, and treat them as equals. But how we do that, I think, differs politically on party lines. Okay, so anyways, do y'all have any other questions or comments, concerns, thoughts? I don't really want to hammer certain issues too much, so And also, there's actually some really good homilies on this already. They've been circulating around. You can find them online. You're welcome. Okay, so I think, well, I'm satisfied. I hope you're satisfied. This was kind of a lot. I was afraid to get into this topic, but I think we covered it well. That there is basically at the end of the day, right, a preeminent issue that we should be voting for, and that's abortion. Okay, so this doesn't mean we don't love those who have had them, or we don't love those who commit them. Okay, so we love those people. We want them to find Christ. We want them to be healed. We want to we want everyone, no matter what. We believe in God's mercy, Christ's mercy, right? That they are welcome into our fold, and that, God has redemption for all, no matter what we've done. And that beyond that issue, the others are very important. You have to weigh them on your own and figure out what's really going to stop you from going one way or the other. Okay? So thank you all. I've really appreciated and enjoyed this time with you. I always do. And please let me know how you, what you think of this, right? I mean, again, I'm trying to walk a line here that I'm not used to doing. So this is new for me. Okay, so if I represented myself, I would be a little more bullish in one direction, but I think you guys all kind of got the picture. So anyways, God bless you. All right.